VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We have 20 days until the regular season when Sam Darnold's Vikings head to New Jersey for a date with the New York Giants, who looked really shitty in the last preseason game. But we digress already. I want to get into some of the preseason stuff, some of the roster additions, and look at the upcoming regular season with Sal Spice. How are you, Sal?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Good. We haven't talked in a couple weeks. What you been up to?
Oh man, what have I been up to? Well, training camp and stuff,
Mhm.
night practice. I had a girls' cabin weekend, so a lot of stuff. But I'm excited for this week to just be more chill, get my life together before I go back to school next week. And Viking season is going to be crazy. So.
It is. Do you have your tailgate all in order? Is that plan in
Uh,
motion?
well, I don't know if I already told you this, but I'm stressed out because I had that girls' cabin weekend planned before the NFL schedule came out,
Hmm.
and so I didn't get my dress rehearsal of the preseason game. So I am a little worried. Obviously, I know how to pack for it at this point, but I'm worried about like who's working security. Are they gonna like try to dictate where I can park? Am I gonna have to like what time am I gonna have to get there? There's a new app for parking, so those things I'm nervous about, but it'll be fine.
Yeah, you have pretty ample experience. I think you'll figure it out on the fly if things get weird at all.
These security people, though, I don't know. Last year was tough. I didn't win them over for probably till halfway through the season. So
Oh, okay. All right, well,
yeah.
let's talk about some of the large items in the Vikings orbit. The first, some folks woke up to the news, some were already up for it, that Stephon Gilmore, alas, had joined the Vikings roster, and that was confirmed today by the Vikings social media team. So I want to know, we chatted about this in general for about 3 months, and it happened. What does the Stephon Gilmore addition to the Vikings cornerback room do for you?
Well, first of all, isn't it crazy like how much stuff can change since the last time I talked to
Oh
you?
man, yeah.
Like the whole vibe can completely change, even from like last Wednesday or something. But like it's completely different. But he was in town was it last week, and he left without a deal. So I kind of thought, well, that ship has probably sailed. And obviously, it's great. I mean, I think it makes their weakest position group substantially better. I mean, at least much more respectable than it was. And so I am personally not as worried about that position group as I was. Like everyone was freaking out about, oh, JJ's not going to be here, and I'm like, but I don't know. I think like the cornerback group could potentially take maybe even 2 wins
Mhm.
away from this team. So hopefully this will make things a little bit more stable. Of course, I'm upset because this means my guy is probably he, he's hanging on by a string, Duke Shelley. So I'm of course in a personal way, for personal reasons, a little upset about it. But
Yeah, I'm wondering if your guy is on the outside looking in, if he can go to the practice squad. I don't know that he would be immediately stolen by a team. But you are correct that adding Gilmore, and they already like Fabian Moreau, we think, probably
mm,
complicates Duke Shelley's job security. I'm going to guess they keep 5 corners, six the max. And if you start doing a
yeah.
numbers reduction game, it's hard to get Shelley in there.
Yeah, I think it's possible that he'll clear waivers just because of, whatever was going on with him last year. He definitely didn't get much action, but it probably depends like who's thirsty for a cornerback
Hmm.
around the league. So I hope that he does. I actually got to meet him last week after night practice. And I will say, standing next to him in person, he is a lot. I mean, I'm not no short king discrimination whatsoever. I don't think that it's fair, but I was like, oh wow, like you are a lot, you know, you are a little bit smaller than what I was
Yeah.
expecting. So I understand it. I just, wish it could be different.
Well, I think that is the rub on him. Like when he's with the Bears and stuff, everybody looks at him and says, "Oh, you're a slot guy, huh?" And then they put him in the
Mhm.
slot, and he's more effective on the outside, even if he's short. And I think that is how he was unlocked with the Vikings. I don't think it was just some big purple voodoo. I think it's he's a better outside corner, and the rest of the league's like, "Nah, you're too short for it."
Yeah, absolutely. I think he just hasn't had a lot of opportunities to
Hmm.
play in that role, and he did shine in that role with the Vikings. And I guess people just
Wonderfully.
weren't watching the film. I don't know. Were they not watching the Buffalo game? Uh, so yeah, I mean, for that reason, it's kind of like, but I mean, I made him some friendship bracelets. They're like Yeah, so I hope he gets to actually wear them. If he's cut, he's not going to be able to.
Yeah, I want to pound home the notion too on Shelley in 2022. We'll see what happens this season. He was good. He wasn't just good by a Vikings cornerback standard. He wasn't, hey, he was better than we thought. He was wonderful, like across the board, every metric, passer rating against PFF. So, and you spoke about the vibe of the Vikings. It's been so strange. So we had the post draft, the McCarthy honeymoon, which was great. And that came to a screeching halt when Kyrie Jackson passed away. And then Jordan Addison was arrested 5-6 days later. And then where training camp started, we got all happy again. JJ McCarthy looked awesome. Then he looked awesome in the preseason. Then he also tore his meniscus. And then we went through that PTSD. And now Stephon Gilmore's here. A little bit more optimism. It's just been a roller coaster, hasn't it?
I mean, it's been really crazy. I mean, with the vibe at the end of last week, I don't remember which day it was that Addison got hurt and got carted off. Was that Thursday?
No, I was coming home from Hawaii. It was Wednesday.
Oh,
I was
Wednesday.
getting all these text messages.
Oh my God. I mean, the world was like, the sky was falling, literally. Like everyone was like, oh, we're not even going to get a single win. And it did really feel like that. And it's really been a wild ride. I mean, obviously, as Vikings fans, we are very bipolar, very up and down. But this has been to the extreme this offseason, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it's just one thing after another. And it's weird how it alternates between negative and positive. All right, speaking of negative and positive, on Saturday, the win over the Browns, that was one of the most entertaining and fun preseason games I can remember since Slaughter Mania of 2019 or whatever it was. I think it was mainly because all these UDFA guys stood off the page and we were all like, oh my God, I knew that guy was good. I think that was it. But what for you stood off the page? What did you enjoy about that 27-12 win in Cleveland?
Well, first of all, I mean, 2-0 in the preseason. That hasn't happened in a long time. I don't know if that translates to anything successful because I feel like, and I probably should look this up, but my feeling is historically when they're really good in the preseason, they're really bad in the regular season. But, we hadn't been good in the past however many years. So that's exciting, obviously. And that was a convincing win on Saturday, despite, it being a preseason game. So, I mean, I think probably everyone's going to have the same answer here. I mean, Lewis Cine, I don't think anybody saw that coming, and he did play the entire game. And now it's like, oh, wow, what are we seeing here? But yeah, I mean, it was great. It was great to see Jackson and Naylor and how successful they were. I mean, just those getting those toes in was just like, wow, where has this been? Maybe we do have a legitimate wide receiver 3 and 4, which has also been a huge concern of mine, especially with, we don't know what's going to go on with Addison injury wise or legally potential suspension. So that made me feel a lot better as well.
On scene. So I had to ask myself, and I'm still asking myself this, was that a single good exhibition game against third stringers that we've overblown into talking himself into a roster spot? Or do you believe he will earn one, and should he?
Well, I think a big reason he played the entire game was probably to get a lot on film. He did have a showcase game for him, but what was the motivation there as far as, from a coaching standpoint? I think we also, like you said, we have to, take into account that they're playing in a much more vanilla scheme than they're going to be playing when they're playing real games. So we don't know how he's performing in what Flores, his true vision for the defense is. I mean, I'm happy for the guy. I'm sure that was a huge confidence boost for him. If I had to pick right now, I think he probably isn't going to make the roster. And I think it probably had a lot more to do with gaining some potential trade value because this team needs picks really bad. So I don't know. I mean, of course, I want him to be successful, be a great story, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, here's where I was just going to ask you this. So this is kind of a segue. I tweeted this the other night, or maybe it was yesterday. The only thing that's worse than not drafting Kyle Hamilton instead of Cine is cutting Cine and then having him go to the Cowboys or the Dolphins and then be a baller. Like,
right.
I mean, unless you get like a unforeseen draft pick coming back, I don't think he would get anything more than a 6th or 7th rounder. But let's just say they cut him. We like Jay Ward, Robbie McCain. I don't know that Vikings fans will just be happy for him that he latched on and started balling elsewhere. It would make the leadership look like imbeciles that they gave up on him too soon. So it's so weird how a week ago it was a foregone conclusion that the guy was probably going to get cut. But after a single game, we're like, wowzers. I think it like last year they kept 6 safeties, which is a lot. And if they did that again, it's basically a binary choice between Scene versus Bobby McCain or Scene versus Jay Ward.
Right. Well, and that's another thing that the Gilmore sighting brings in because it was like Jay Ward could maybe go over and play corner, so now he's a little bit less valuable as well, and as far as making the roster goes. So I don't know. I mean, but you're right. I mean, how many times have we been in that position with first round picks where they go elsewhere? Like, for example, Cordero Patterson. All of a sudden, somebody figured out how to use him, and he did nothing with the Vikings. Laquan Treadwell, who is obviously not a superstar by any means, but he's a serviceable wide receiver. He's still in the league, and we've seen this a bunch when our first round picks end up going elsewhere and working out. And I'm with you that I don't think Vikings fans would be into it, despite it not really being his fault, the position that he's in. But like, look at how little he played last year.
Yeah, he was,
and the injury still could have been nagging, of course, but
yeah, I think that
he
would
was
be
active.
that would be my caveat. If they keep him, use him. Don't just bury his ass on the bench and then have to, I'm sick of hearing people bitch about him. Like, that's always the when things are going great. They're like, what about Lewis Cine? Or anytime a Ravens game's on, we have to hear about Kyle Hamilton. So selfishly, I want them to keep him and I want him to play a little bit.
Right, and that's like a huge critique of Kwesi, and I don't know if that's necessarily fair because he doesn't have a crystal ball and see that the guy is going to have a catastrophic injury. So, I mean, it's like with those things. I mean, I do. Hindsight is 2020, and that's why you make the big bucks is to nail the draft. But I don't know if that's necessarily a fair critique.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he'll make it, and then just gets a little bit more playing time. Because we know injuries on top of the injuries we've already had will emerge, the normal ones, and I think it'd be a good showcase. God, he looked good against the Browns. All right, the next thing I got for you is piggybacking on the melancholy from last week, the slow roll of bad news on JJ McCarthy that started as night practice. Like, we don't think it's anything that big. Ooh, it's a torn meniscus. He might be out 4 to 6 weeks or 4 to 6 months. Oh, of course he's going to be out the whole year because that's what happens to Vikings fans. Is this a lost season with JJ McCarthy injured?
No, I don't think so at all. And I had to check myself a lot last week because I was really upset, when that came out that he was out for the year. But I mean, I think I was in the camp that Sam Darnold was most likely going to start and that JJ would be worked in, if things were going terribly wrong or maybe halfway through the season, if it was kind of the division was out of reach, like Green Bay and the Lions are just, light years ahead. I thought then we'll maybe see him. So I didn't think that he was going to have a ton of action this season anyway, most likely. So of course it is upsetting that, as Vikings fans, we don't have, the possibility and that excitement of being able to evaluate him in a game. But I think if it's going to happen, first of all, you want it to happen now. If you're going to tear something in your knee, that's the best thing that you can tear.
It is,
as far as that goes. And so maybe, he's obviously still going to get the knowledge of seeing, learning the playbook and things like that. And also, I think it's maybe going to take a lot of pressure off of Sam not having that possibility, like breathing down his neck, because Kevin O'Connell could say as many times until he's blue in the face, like, this is your job. He knows the reality of the situation. And the first bad game he has, the fans in US Bank Stadium are going to be clamoring to see JJ in, and that's not going to help his confidence either. So, obviously I don't want anybody to be hurt, but from that standpoint, it could be positive.
Yeah, on the meniscus point, that's a wonderful one. I've been watching sports since 1989, and I don't think I've ever heard like, hey, Travis had a torn meniscus, and how do you bounce back from that? He never came back. It could have been a lot worse, but it sucks that it had to be the bad version where he needed the full surgery. And you just couldn't help but think for those 48 hours, of course this had to happen. Like, why could he just look shitty in the preseason? And we'd be like, oh, all right, we'll sit on him. He looked great in the preseason, just like Scene. And so we're like, God, it's entirely maddening that the guy looks great. Our first semblance of a really sweet quarterback since Dante, and we can't even use him this year.
Yeah, I totally get that, and I think it probably brought back a lot of PTSD from the Teddy situation. And I understand the comparison for sure, but I think that was like night and day difference for at least from my standpoint. I mean, the Vikings had just come off of winning the division. Teddy led them to a very convincing, led them down the field at Lambeau to win that game, to win the division. And I mean, so the expectations were very high at that point. He has not only just like a torn meniscus, but a devastating injury where, he could have potentially had an amputation. And the Vikings were opening US Bank Stadium for the very first time ever, 18 days away from playing the Green Bay Packers. So, I mean, I'm thinking, oh my God, like they're going to beat us in our very first game, and they are never going to let that go. People talk about the Vikings being cursed, which I don't necessarily believe. That would have turned me to the other side. Like US Bank Stadium would have been cursed forever if that happened. So while I understand the comparison and why that's bringing up those feelings, I don't think it's the same at all.
Yeah, it's certainly not. If this would have been an ACL, we could have compared this, but a meniscus is a different ball game. It's not at all career threatening. The only thing that really, I guess the secondary thing that makes me upset is now when we hit the 2025 off season, I hope that September of 2025 would be like, all right, baby, we saw McCarthy for 6 games. He looks like he's going to be good. Let's go, contend for the postseason. We're probably right back to where we are right now with hoping McCarthy can translate to the regular season. And then, predicting a 7-10 and 8-9 record because he didn't get any snaps his rookie year. And that kind of sucks because he was supposed to take a couple lumps this year, maybe in November, December, January.
Yeah, from that point, yeah, I definitely agree. But I mean, do you really think that he'll go through not necessarily being the starter? I feel like Kevin will come out and say, you're the starter. Like, you're my guy. This is your time. I don't know. I don't think that he'll do this again. I mean, I could be wrong. It probably depends on how he looks, but I hope so. But you're probably right as far as like, where the record, what we're looking at again, and they're kind of losing this
I don't
in the development.
Unless Darnold is a total baller, throwing 35 touchdowns and we get to the NFC Championship, I don't think that we'll have like, how that's always the ceiling. We don't even bother saying Super Bowl.
No.
I don't think, I hope that we don't have a big ass quarterback debate next year. It's just that in terms of him, it'll be his first career start. It's basically a rookie year over again. And maybe because he studied so much in the 2024 season, he'll be more ready than most. I think that's what I have to look forward to. All right, I got 2 more for you before we let you go. Since you presumably study this roster pretty intensely, give me one surprise roster cut that we will learn about in 8 days.
I don't know. I feel like with this season, it's tougher to make these predictions than it has been in years past for me. Because, but I think if I have to choose, I'm going to go with Jay Ward.
Okay.
I don't consider Lewis Dean really a surprise cut. I don't consider Reisner really a surprise cut. So that one is the only one that I can really come up with, and especially now with the Gilmore acquisition.
So you think Reisner will be cut, or that you're just floating that out there?
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay.
Just because of him saying I haven't ever played this position before, and he just hasn't really looked great. He hasn't been with the ones. I think he'd be great to keep around for the depth perspective, but I don't think I wouldn't be surprised. And he doesn't seem super into switching positions either. So
yeah, and he's notably hurt with something right now. And,
yeah.
So that doesn't. It's kind of like Robert Tonyan. Like I don't know what to do with him on my roster projection because we were told that he looked great in June, but then that's it. Like he's hurt, and so I don't know if he's safe. With Reisner, I don't think he'll be cut because then you don't have guard depth. Like Michael Juergens hasn't looked good in the preseason, and we don't have Chris Reed anymore. The ace in the hole.
What about? I feel like they've given Tyrese Robinson a lot of playing time, so I feel like they do like him. I don't know if he'll make the team, but
yeah. Well, I was excited. Well, I thought Reisner, like the day of that he signed, would probably start, but then I saw the deal was only for $2.4 million. I was like, oh, okay, it will be Brandel. It's Brandel for sure. And then you start doing the Ed Ingram versus Reisner debate, and it's like, all right, that can go either way. I don't know. I
Yeah,
think
I don't consider Ingram really a surprise cut either. Yeah, same. I could see it going either way, you know.
yeah, I hope they don't
Um,
cut Reisner because I don't want to get in that stupid ass guard position where we're like, oh, hey, we don't have any guards. They all
I
suck or
know.
something like that. So I guess I have scarred from the 2020 season or something like that. My
Oh.
surprise cut is Patrick Jones. I don't know if that's a huge surprise, but Bo Richter has looked great. Kwesi
Mhm.
Adofo-Mensah joined the telecast in the second quarter with PA during the game, and he made it sound like Jihad Ward was pretty darn safe. And so I think that somebody would have to be cut to make room for Richter and Ward. And to me, that's Patrick Jones, who was drafted by Spielman. So that is mine on this topic.
Ooh, I didn't even remember that. That's a blast from the past, right?
Yeah, it is.
How
Yeah, he
many
was
guys around from then
well,
anymore?
he was the one, I think he was a third rounder that made it. And when Kellen Mond flamed out and Wyatt Davis after the trade, somehow you slid backward, got Darisaw, then got the guys that we thought would be sweet at the time that turned out to be nothing. All right, what about a
Mhm.
surprise guy who makes the roster?
That I honestly had a really hard time with. I feel like there is no Mr. Mankato standout from this camp necessarily. Like, I mean, I think early on people were saying like, oh, Naylor is going to be, you know, he's in the running for Mr. Mankato, but it's like, well, really, like I think we wanted him to step up. I don't feel like and you know grow into that role where he was supposed to be. So I don't think that he necessarily is a Mr. Mankato candidate. I really struggled with this one. So I actually did say Robinson at guard would be my
Okay.
surprise keep.
Yeah, that would be a surprise keep. Mainly because most people don't know who he is. So him making the
Yeah.
roster over somebody would be notable. What about like even so we're pretty intensely ingrained in the roster, but do you consider Dwight McLaughlin possibly making it a surprise make?
Yeah, I would consider that a surprise, and I know that he's getting a lot of attention on Twitter. Certainly, he's playing well in the opportunities that he's had. So that actually is probably a better surprise pick. I don't know how that all makes that room look.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, there's just so many possibilities.
Yeah, he would probably, if he was going to make it, he'll either take Caleb Evans' spot or we've
Yeah.
overblown how much they like Fabian Moreau. The only reason I'm overblowing Fabian Moreau is because he didn't play. And usually that means if you don't play in the preseason, you're safe for a roster spot. But I mean, Fabian Moreau is not like some big, whoa, how are you going to dethrone him on the roster?
I wish I could say Caleb Evans was my surprise cut. I really do. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm over it. But I don't know. I think they'll probably end up keeping him. But I would love a Caleb to go and Duke to stay. That would be my preference.
Yeah, well, the quarterback room, like you said about 10 minutes, 15 minutes ago, probably fundamentally changed because Stephon Gilmore's there now. Now you have a guy who's not going to sit on the bench. And until he
Right.
got there, you had about 3 dudes who we know and love that probably would sit on the bench. But now you have Gilmore, Murphy for sure, and then probably Griffin, assuming his hamstring's good. And then we're trying to figure out these final 2 or 3 spots. And McLaughlin had the almost pick 6, and Evans is there. Our guy Shelley. So it's a really weird conversation to have about how thick the cornerback room is, but we don't know if the cornerback room is any good.
Yeah, yeah, it is really strange. I mean, last year, like I can point to a clear person, like Ivan Pace Jr. Absolutely, like
Mhm.
for sure, like the Mr. Mankato for sure. But this year, it's just kind of like
Yeah.
no one's doing terrible, but no one's doing like stepping up in a huge way that's flashing. So I don't know. When are we going to know the answer to this? What date?
August
What?
27th, so a week from tomorrow.
Okay, so the last game is on Saturday.
Yep,
What is
at
that? The
Philadelphia.
25th? No,
Uh,
23rd,
let's see.
24th. That's the 24th. So
24th. Yep.
the very next day they have to have it.
No, 24th. Cut downs are the 27th.
Oh, you said 27th. Sorry, I
Yep.
thought you said 25th.
No, it's
Okay,
a week from
yeah.
tomorrow. So.
Oh man, it feels the anticipation is just. It was a lot easier when they did multiple rounds of
Graduals.
cuts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I miss
yeah.
that. I'm from from my job perspective, it was more fun to track. And then now they just do it all on the same day. And that really realistically means 700 guys, even considering the practice squad, become unemployed on the single day and they all hit free agency. It's really strange.
Yeah, and from a like front office standpoint, it's a lot easier to evaluate who you potentially want to pick up when
Mm-hmm.
it's not 700 people at one
Yeah.
time because you're evaluating your roster throughout camp. Okay, this is what we need a cornerback, but they're not all getting cut until the end.
Yeah, I'll never
Um,
understand why they got rid of the gradual cut downs, but all right, Sal, do
I
you have any closing arguments for the show?
no, I think we covered it. Yeah, I'm really excited. Like it's just like I said, crazy the feeling from last week to now.
Yeah.
I'm
And it
I'm
just
still the most hype I've been in a long time.
yeah, it's a continual roller coaster. All right, start studying the roster some more, and certainly watch the preseason game Saturday when we chat next Monday. That'll be our final correspondence before the roster release, and we'll chat about that. Okay.
Perfect.
All
Okay.
right. Have
Talk
a
to you
wonderful
later.
week. Later.
You too. Bye.
See ya.